Thank you for speaking to us. We've got quite a lot to get through, so if I promise to ask short questions, I'd be really grateful for short answers.
Great.
Deal. You're going to deliver the budget then in possibly even more extraordinary circumstances than your first one last March, with much of the economy, of course, being shut down for a large part of the last year. Can we first talk about the scale of the problem the country faces and obviously that you face in managing that? So, first on the wider economy, what in your view will be the size of the permanent economic damage that the pandemic has done to the UK once, of course, all restrictions are lifted and everything's back open again? Or how big will the permanent economic scarring be, as the economists like to call it?
Well, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility, Tom, has estimated that scarring impact that you're talking about will be around 3%. Other people think it could be a bit lower. Some people think it could be a bit higher. But if you're talking more generally, you compared this budget to last year. Last year, at the outset of this crisis, I said I would do whatever it takes to support British people and businesses through this crisis, and I remain committed to that. And we will keep supporting people through the remaining stage of this crisis, but also level with people about the challenges that we face in our public finances as a result of coronavirus and our plan to address that.
So 3%, what does that mean in billions? That's a new figure for the OBR I've just calculated, is it?
That's the figure that they've previously published.
Do you know the new one?
The new one will be, if there is an update to that, will be part of the OBR's financial outlook that they publish at budget on Wednesday.
Okay. What about the scale of the damage to public finances? That you will know about, surely, because that's something you need to take a very careful look at. Once tax receipts are back up and running, what, for example, will be the size of, say, next year's deficit be to the nearest tens of millions, maybe?
Again, you'll see the updates of all of that on Wednesday when that's published by the independent forecaster alongside the budget. But what we know from what they said previously was that even after we recover from coronavirus, we were still running very high borrowing levels and debt was continuing to rise indefinitely into the future. Now, that's the problem that I think needs addressing for a few reasons. First of all, I've only been able to act as comprehensively and generously as we have done through this crisis because we came into it with strong public finances. I want to make sure that next time something like this comes along, whoever's in my shoes can respond in the same way. That's what the country will need. I think secondly, although interest rates have been very low, there's no guarantee that they stay that low, and we need to be mindful of what changes in interest rates and inflation do to the amount of money that we have to spend on that every year. And also we want to deliver on our promises on public services. And when I look at all of that in the round, that's why I want to be upfront with people and level them about the challenge and make sure that we can address it.
Okay, well, let's get to that. There's an awful lot you have to do, as you say, in terms of what you have to spend. I think you've been clear about that. Something clearly you're going to have to give. But your announcement this morning, £5 billion in restart grants, which is £6,000 for smaller businesses, £18,000 for bigger ones like hospitality, available to, 700,000 companies from April to get them back up and running. And while this is very welcome and businesses welcoming it this morning, some also say that it's far too small a figure. It's a drop in the ocean in terms of a stimulus package for the danger and the mess the economy is currently in.
Well, it's only one part of an overall programme of support. And if you look at the total amount of support that we had provided thus far in the crisis, it was just shy of £300 billion. And if you look at someone like the IMF, who compares lots of different countries, I think we are essentially the second most responsive country anywhere in the world, behind only the US. So when I said at the beginning of this we would do what it takes to support the economy, I think we have delivered on that. We went big, we went early, and there's more to come in next week's budget.
Okay, I think you can probably divide that into two, though, can't you? There is money you spend to support the economy and businesses during the pandemic, and then there's what you do after the pandemic is over to stimulate recovery and growth. So you look across the water at Joe Biden's plans, you just might have mentioned that, £1.9 trillion stimulus package. I wonder how you view that, because economists here say if you want to emulate that size of stimulus in the UK, you need to spend 190 billion, not just on support, but on stimulus going forward from now onwards.
Well, I think it's quite difficult to make apples to apples comparisons because everyone does things slightly differently. But if you look at the numbers from the IMF, which look at cumulative support over last year, this year, and next, because that is the right way to think about it, we are second only to the US and ahead of pretty much every other advanced economy in the size of the support that we have put in place. So I don't think anyone can accuse us of not going big. That's exactly what we have done. And the Prime Minister set out a roadmap. People and businesses will move along that path, and I want to give them the reassurance that we will support them along that path. And we've already made announcements like today's one on grants of up to £18,000 for restaurants and hospitality businesses, for example. We've also said that we will give businesses doubling the cash bonus that we give businesses to hire new apprentices, up to £3,000, because we care about, and I care about, protecting people's jobs, helping them find new jobs. That's an effective way to do it. So there's lots that we're doing in lots of different ways, and we will support people along the roadmap and drive the recovery forward.
Well, one way that, of course, you have helped previously during the last lot was Eat Out to Help Out. Do you see a role for another Eat Out to Help Out, perhaps this summer? And what about Shop Out to Help Out? This was an idea we heard this week, wasn't it? Vouchers to spend in high streets, courtesy of the government to boost small retail. Are you looking at that?
We'll get lots of suggestions in the Treasury, and I'll have a look at that as well. But I think what we saw last time is consumption does recover quite strongly when we reopen things. We didn't know what would happen last time, but that's actually what did happen, which is good and could give us some optimism for the future. But I also want to make sure that business investment can play its part in our recovery. So that's something also that we're looking at. But in general, I will keep making sure that we support people as we go through the roadmap, drive the recovery forward, but also level with people about the challenges we face and make sure that we address those as well.
Okay, because of course there is another argument, and in fact sometimes made by yourself in the last year at various stages, that big state interventions after, say, for example, the final end of all the restrictions, which at the moment could be June the 21st, maybe later, we don't know, big state interventions and memoirs actually aren't much of a help, because all they do is delay, I think your phrase, the new normal, the big economic reordering that is needed so profitable business can start up and offer sustainable jobs, and older unprofitable business ones can sadly close.
Yeah, over the past 12 months, we've had to do things that I didn't expect to have to do because we were faced with a shock, the likes of which we hadn't seen before. And it was right for the government and the state to act in a particular way at an extraordinary time to protect people. But as things reopen, you're right, the nature of that support will adapt and evolve. And that's why last July we outlined our plan for jobs. Employment is the thing that I'm most concerned about. Sadly, 750,000 people, 750,000 people have already lost their jobs. I always said we would not be able to protect every job and save every business, but what we can do is provide those people with hope and opportunity for the future, which is why, for example, doubling the bonus we give companies to hire apprentices is so important, or our Kickstart scheme for young people. These are all examples of policies that look forward and provide people with fresh opportunity.
But just on that end of restrictions moment, do you see a role, a big state role from then onwards to prop up businesses when restrictions are no longer active, or would you prefer, as many in your party would, to allow the natural instincts, the wild instincts of capitalism take over?
I think there's obviously a need for the government and the state to try and support and protect people's jobs and businesses when the state is causing the restrictions on those businesses from operating normally, and obviously as those tail off, the underlying rationale for that support will change, and that's why it's right that what we do adapts and evolves, and initiatives like our hiring incentive or Kickstart are different types. They're examples of the state doing things to help stimulate job creation and get people into work, give them the skills they need. For example, the Prime Minister's Lifetime Skills Guarantee, which is a fantastic initiative. Those are all examples of the state doing things going forward, which will help people, as well as getting on with our ambitious programme of public investment. Infrastructure investment is something that we've talked a lot about, and what we've set out are our plans. And we talk about the US, we set out plans which will mean that investment in capital projects will be at the highest sustained level in 40 or 50 years. That's going to drive growth and create jobs in every part of our United Kingdom.
Okay, let's get on and talk about tax rises, which, if you don't mind me saying, you might have added to the fevered speculation over the last few days by saying there is a need to level people. You've said it again on this programme. I won't obviously ask you about specific tax rises because those have to be for the budget, but do you agree that there could be no bigger choke on growth than increasing tax on business, the very people we rely on to create those new jobs?
Well, Tom, unfortunately, I can't talk about tax rises. Thank you for appreciating that.
It's a philosophical point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we've been trying to do our best to support businesses through this with the various things that we've put in place, whether it's cuts to VAT on hospitality, business rates, holidays, discounted loans, and today carrying on generously our cash grants program. That's because I particularly appreciate the role that business plays, and ultimately it's business that are creating jobs and employing people, and we want to make sure we support them to do that. And we're doing that in lots of different ways, all the various things I just talked about, or the Kickstart scheme. Again, that's directly fully funding businesses to create high quality jobs for young people who are at risk of unemployment. And I know that businesses are eager to reopen again, welcome us back, and I look forward to that being the case in the coming weeks and months.
Okay, interest rates are rock bottom, though, at the moment. Inflation's still obviously very low. Demand is precarious. We don't know how we're going to come out of this pandemic. So why the rush? Why the rush to be fiscally responsible now when pretty much every economic voice out there is telling you you just do not need to put up taxes this year?
Well, we step back and we talked about the shock coronavirus has had on our economy and public finances, and I think it's important that we address that for a few reasons. I've only been able to respond in the way that I have because we came into this with strong public finances. I want to make sure that when the next shock comes along, whoever's sitting in my chair is able to do the same thing for the country. That's what they will need to do. Secondly, you mentioned interest rates, and you're right too, that they have been very low, but there's no guarantee that they stay exactly at that level. And because we've borrowed so much and our debt levels are high, we're much more sensitive to changes in those rates. So we need to be mindful of that. And lastly, we want to deliver strong public services, which I think we all believe in. So, given all of that, I think it is important to make sure that we level with people about the situation and are clear about our plans to address that.
Okay, some might say that you're the right man at the wrong time for this job. Your instincts are a fiscal hawk, a Thatcherite fan, a small government, a deregulator, and a tax cutter. This is an age of big government, isn't it? Where chancellors need to make massive interventions. And you have a boss who is very keen on state largesse.
I said at the beginning of this crisis that I would do what it took to support British people and businesses through this unprecedented crisis. And that's what we remain committed to doing. Both the Prime Minister and I share that desire to support people in the economy at what is a really difficult time. And we want to deliver on the promises that we made to people, and people elected us because they trust us to be responsible with their money and have strong public finances and a strong economy, and to deliver strong public services. And that's what we will get on and do. And both of us take that responsibility seriously.
Okay, we're coming towards the end, but let me just tell you about this. We interviewed Jodie Kidd this morning, supermodel, racing driver, pub landlady, and she runs a pub in Sussex now, and she's got a particular challenge for you. So let me just play you this quick clip.
When things get lifted up, we're going to get to a point where we're all going to go, oh, let's go and celebrate, and there's going to be nowhere to celebrate in because the hospitality and the F&B industries are destroyed. So I'm off campaigning again to try and hopefully, my dream would be, getting at least 25% cut in beer tax. And I'm going to keep pushing.
Okay. You're taking on Boris and Rishi.
Head on. Absolutely head on.
And Chancellor, that's not all she said. Just one more thing you must hear.
There's a few amazing members of the Conservative Party that I'm massive fans of, and I think Rishi is one of them. I think he's a good guy. Yeah, I do admire him a lot.
There you go. You have it direct from a supermodel. She admires you a lot. Are you going to save her pub and cut beer duty?
Well, again, we'll talk about duties at budget. We did freeze all alcohol duties in last year's budget, I think for the first or second time in a decade. So hopefully that's helped. But I think, Jodie makes a broader point that's important. The hospitality industry is really important to the British economy. It's over 150,000 businesses, pubs like hers and up and down the country. It employs over 2 million people, and those people are disproportionately young, women, those on lower incomes. And beyond the economic impact, that, hospitality industry is the life and soul of our towns, our villages, it's, how we celebrate, as she said, together. That's an important part of our life. And for me, it's always been important to try and do what I can to support that industry. That's why the grants today are really important. Hopefully Jodie's pub will get a grant worth up to £18,000, which will help her. And all the other things we've done, we have cut VAT from 20% to 5% temporarily for that industry. We've cancelled all their business rates over the past 12 months. It's because I care about that industry and the people who work in it, and I want to try and do what I can to support those jobs. And they should feel reassured that they remain uppermost in my mind. And you will see what we're going to do in a few days' time.
Yeah, you won't tell us what you do with budget. I understand that, but I think Jodie's going to like you even more after the end of your budget. And you are looking at this differentiation review, aren't you, in rates on beer and alcohol sold in pubs and supermarkets. That we will hear about from you on Wednesday, won't you?
What we are doing, we are in the process of gathering thoughts for a future review of alcohol duties. Well, what we are committed to is having a proper look at how we do alcohol taxation. Now that we've left the EU, there are, as you mentioned, ways that we can do things differently. We're going to start that process of working with industry to get people's thoughts on what they think the best reforms might be. So we're not at the end of that process, we're more at the beginning of that process. But you're right, there are changes that one could make.
Chancellor, it's Gloria here. I just have a quick question for you, if I may. If any Tory MP votes against the budget or abstains, will they face disciplinary action?
Well, look, Gloria, as Conservatives, or people elect Conservatives, they elect a Conservative government in part, as we were discussing, because they trust us with their money. They trust us after the economy and finances, and the Prime Minister take that responsibility very seriously, and we will keep supporting the economy through this difficult time, but also level with people about the challenges we face so that we can provide resilience for the future and make sure that we deliver on the strong public services that we all want to see.
Chancellor, one final point, and then we'll let you go. Some of your MPs have been wondering, are you going to be signing anything this week? Any more online posters or adverts? That famous Sunak signatures. It's wound up some of your MPs, some of your ministers. Johnny Mercer always likes to complain about it. Are you done with your signature?
I think you've asked me about this every time I've been on, Tom.
It causes interest.
I try and just communicate in multiple different ways because that's the world that we live in, and whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter Q&As, or whether it's being on the Andrew Marr Show or talking to you here, people get their news and their information in lots of different ways. My job, the job that I have, the decisions that I make impact everybody, and it's important for me that people have a way to engage with what I'm doing so they can hold me accountable for it, come to a view on it, and I'm always going to try and do things that engage the broadest number of people as possible. I think that's a good thing. It's healthy for our debate, and we'll keep at it.